Well, here in this room, ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to present the entire peace movement of the United States of America. Listen, nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about the issues you're raising. Nobody cares about it in this campaign. You're pipe dreamers. Oh, peace. You think you can go march and sing and then show signs and there'll be peace. You don't understand how complicated this is, and we've got to be prepared for the Russians who may at any moment come over the... Let me just... You started from Los Angeles, California in March of this year, and in November of this year, you will be marching into Washington on the conclusion of an odyssey that has seen just about everything. Snow, wind, rain, and you have run out of money. The original sponsors of this march, what was it called? Pro-Peace? Collapsed, ran out of money, not unlike the liberals. You can't manage anything. You don't know about bottom line? You're living in some kind of vacuum where we're all going to live in peace? You are so unrealistic. And Ronald Reagan's in the White House, and nobody's paying any attention to you, and you can quote me. You made it to New York.
Two things.
It's so easy to sing, you know what I mean? All we care about here, and I speak for the entire East Coast, all we care about today is the World Series.
So do we. We've gone bankrupt, but our deficit has never been as large as the United States of America, and it's not a liberal president that made it that way. And that's made that way through defense spending. War costs more than peace does.
But we can't afford a breakout of peace. Your brother-in-law will lose... Your brother-in-law will lose his job if we don't. You know that. This isn't funny. This is not funny. You tell me what we're going to do with all those people, proud Americans all, who work for Fairchild, for example, or Northrop. Get them a decent job? Easy to say.
We're going to offer them a better job where they're building things that will not kill us.
Yeah. Did people wave at you as you made your way down through the hall?
Across the country.
Really? Let me... Who else wants it? Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Well, I just want to say one thing. Most of our group is now, right about now, walking across George Washington Bridge. Yeah. This is just a small contingent of the Peace March.
How many would you say, hardcore, as we might call you, survived, huh? 1,000. 1,000, that's an exaggeration. Now you're acting just like the political... Excuse me, there's only one host for this show, so please... How many would you... Are you really saying 1,000? I'd say closer to 200.
We had a head count at camp about a week ago, and we had 878, and we've been getting people in every day.
How did you do with the toilets and the showers and you must... what showers? You guys must smell. I haven't noticed it yet, but this has been... You must have been depressed at times, huh? Come on.
Sometimes, but when I want to go back to this question about what we're going to do with the people and putting them to work.
Sure.
You know, if you would take a dead-end industry like military and get rid of it and start working on solar, wind, and water power and start cleaning up our country, there would be so many jobs you wouldn't have to worry about it.
Yes. The liberals have been trying to sell that for 20 years, and we're not listening.
You know why? Because the scientists and the physicists are making more money in the military-industrial complex than they can be out there with this new industry.
You realize that the issues about which you speak and to which you have passionately committed yourself, especially for the past several months, are issues which are not being raised in the campaign of '86. We're against drugs for kids. I think we want to shoot the people who peddle them. That's the issue of this campaign. We appear not to have a whole lot of enthusiasm for Central America, but the Congress has approved $100 million for the Contras. So, you know, you are, talk about tilting at windmills. You guys are alone out there, detached and powerless.
sir.
Yeah. What?
No matter what the leaders are talking about, the people of this country are definitely... You looking at me? They definitely want the bombs to come down. We've talked to them, and sometimes the people do. And there's an Eisenhower quote that we throw around a lot that says if the leaders don't want peace, they better move out of the way and let the people have it.
You talk about jobs, you talk about drugs being the issue. Yes. The bottom line is I think that no matter what your issue is, if this world blows up, none of these issues can be relevant. We've got an issue here.
The world's going to blow up if we listen to you wild-eyed, left-leaning people. We won't have any protection, and then guess what? We'll all be standing in line with tattooed numbers on our arm.
What we have is a situation that affects everyone and threatens everyone. And unless it's resolved, no matter what your issue is, you are in jeopardy. And we need to do something about it. What we're trying to do is raise the awareness of the people in this nation and the world that they need to stand up and save themselves.
Sir.
Yes. I think that peace has a perspective of 10, 20, 30 years. In the long term, why are not the leaders of the nations internationally meeting every year to serve society for 30 days every year at a regular parliamentary session?
You want to have a World Congress of meeting. That's going to throw them at the White House. World Congress. Yeah.
Phil.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about the kids because I think all of us on the march are concerned about the children, and the issue of drugs is just a small aspect of the problem and only a symptom of it, and we have to treat something else, and that's the futility that children feel in this world about their lives. And those of us on the march found out that even though we have the larger issue of walking for global nuclear disarmament, that internally within our city, we call it Peace City, we've had to address the issues of conflict resolution, and that goes right down to the issues with our small children and how we stop them from saying, I hate you, or fighting, and they're the issues we have to resolve.
Let me establish... Look who's here. Let's go left to right, David, and we'll expedite this because it's clear we've got lots of enthusiasm among people who want to exercise their democratic rights. Speak up and say what they mean. Diane Clark, the mayor of Peace City. Diane's been at the Great Peace March from the beginning. Dick Edelman is here, Beverly Hills psychoanalyst. He's going to tell us why we're all here. He's been on the march from the beginning. Martin Sheen, the actor and activist, was arrested this past June for protesting at the Riverside Research Institute in New York City. New York State. Betty Thomas, actress and activist. Betty is, as you know, an Emmy Award-winning regular on NBC's Hill Street Blues, has been with the marchers for the past 3 days. Peter Yarrow is the performer. And Peter Yarrow, who's been there for as long a time as anybody active in the peace movement. Here's a man who has really seen the world. A co-organizer of the 1969 Peace March on Washington, has demonstrated against the war in Vietnam, marched with Martin Luther King, was arrested in front of the South African consulate.
With Mary and Paul.
With Mary and Paul. Are you the senior? You are. You'll stand, sir. You are?
Franklin Folsom.
How old are you, Mr. Folsom?
79.
79. You made the whole darn thing, didn't you?
I started off in Los Angeles.
Now, no speeches. I got to watch all of them. All right, I will. But please remember, we've got a lot of people want in here. What moves you, Frank? What are you doing here?
I've enjoyed life on this planet. I'd like to have it left for my kids and my grandchildren.
You think that it's threatened, do you?
I know it's threatened. There are 50,000 nuclear weapons in this world.
Yeah.
Any one of them could start the war that would blow the planet to pieces.
Yeah. Don't you feel depressed, though, about, I have mockingly attempted to establish what I believe to be is a significant body of opinion in this country that thinks you are all wonderful people, but that you are naive and unrealistic.
I think those people are naive to think that we don't have power. In this audience, we've discovered thousands and hundreds of thousands of people who want us to speak for them in Washington, to tell our congressmen to quit spending our money on war.
Why don't they speak up then? Why? You know, it is not a part of this campaign. Reykjavik, we're proud of the fact that our president stood tall to the Russians. I don't make the news, I just report it. That's, read the polls. Read the polls. There is not, we don't even have we don't have any widespread indignation about Central America. We're worried about our jobs and whether we're going to be able to feed our kids, and whether our kids are going to grow up drug-free. Those are the things that concern us. Let Frank make it. Okay, hang on, Frank. Let me get some.
If we're so concerned about the drug scene, then why are we paying with our tax dollars to have the CIA, some of the biggest pushers in the world, in Nicaragua right now? Read any of John Stockwell, who is an ex-CIA agent, who is exposing some of the lies that we are not exposed to as Americans who are supposed to have freedom of the press.
Let me share with you. Let me share with you just a piece of the documentary that was put together by one of your own, a person who marched with you and filmed it. Here's just a piece of this. I want to give this audience a share of this, of what you looked like as you began in March and made your way across America to finally arrive here in New York City today. Roll the tape.
So I picked up a camera and began documenting the Great Peace March. I was inspired by all the people I met who were willing to leave their homes and jobs and families to go on a trek across America, bringing the message that now is the time for global nuclear disarmament. Their way is marching. My way is filmmaking. I've been with them since the beginning. I began without any financial backing because I had to. It's an important story I feel compelled to tell. And I'm staying with them on the road all the way to Washington, D.C.
And I believe it could be something good has begun.
It is going to be necessary for Pro-Peace as an organization to fold.
Though Pro-Peace, the founding organization, has collapsed financially, the marchers remain unified in their desire to continue their cross-country march for global nuclear disarmament.
Kathy Zoitlin is the filmmaker responsible for that film. Yeah, Peter.
The unreality of the efforts of these people. I tell you, it was a smaller group than this, with Martin Luther King, that swept ultimately through the halls of Congress, and not Congress itself, that changed this nation in terms of the relationship of blacks and whites. It is the people ultimately that have the power if we take it and believe in our own capacities to participate.
Let me get a caller on here. Are you there? I'm glad you waited. Go ahead. Go ahead, caller. Can you hear me?
Am I here?
Yeah, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
The biggest problem is that these people do not appear to be a part of any mainstream that anybody could identify with their own styles, their own way of speaking, with their own language, with their own symbols. They are completely alienated with the mainstream of the United States.
What is the mainstream?
The mainstream, people who look like you and me, Phil.
You mean?
By and large.
Phil, I'd like to answer that.
So this kind of, they look unkempt to you, is that it?
Well, I think that it's not the look, it's not the substance. I mean, I agree with them, and I think that they are right.
You just want them to wear a tie, is that it?
Yes, appear and look. You know, most people can identify with Ronald Reagan than with people who do not look like Ronald.
Hang on just a moment.
If you had walked 3,000 miles across the country, you'd look a little like us too.
On the march, we have lawyers, doctors. I'm a software engineer. We are you.
Yes. Who are you?
My name is Katie. I'm a high school teacher from Grass Valley, California.
So, you all look rather middle American to me. All right, hang on just a second. Hang on, I'll take it. What is this?
So
What
you
are we?
can look like us.
I'm not a mainstream American. I come from nuclear-free New Zealand. And we have a...
And when the commies come for New Zealand, you're going to call us, and you're going to be glad we're there with our nukes. That's
No fear. We have a simple solution and a much cheaper solution. We have no enemies in New Zealand, and I think that having enemies is a very expensive way to live. 67% of your budget goes on defending yourself from enemies. In New Zealand, we spend 4% on our defence, and we don't feel afraid at all, except maybe of the United States defence system.
Is the caller still there?
Yeah, I sure am.
Can you see? Wait a minute. Can you see your TV set? Hold on just a moment, sir. Can you see your television set?
I can.
Good. Stand up here. Look what I found.
I look a little like you because I have a tie. I want to say that in historical perspective, the Great Peace March is one of the many efforts by people to begin in this country to take democracy seriously. And as the Great Peace March builds in communities across the country, that will change the future of the way in which we are safe or not safe. We know, everybody knows, nuclear weapons are extraordinarily disastrous. But we see, with the Peace Development Fund or the Great Peace March, we see in communities across the country people who are willing to say, blessed are the peacemakers, and that's us. We want to be blessed. And we
against that number are a large number of human beings who feel, once you invent a knife, and I say to you and you say to me, look, let's get rid of these knives, they can hurt people. You say, sold, and we shake hands on it, and we get rid of our knives. About 2 weeks later, you and I are going to be having coffee, and I'm going to be looking to see if you've got a knife. How do I know? And you might have a knife. And so, just in case you got a knife, I got kids too. I'm going to get a knife. Just stick it here ready. That is the nature of the human animal. You are fighting your...
The human animal. That's as antiquated as defense. Defense comes from fear. And now that there's nuclear defense, nobody can win. That's the giant fear of our time, and we've had a theory of defense for ever since the beginning. All that's happening is it's changing. It's changing. There's a new way.
One of the responses as we've been walking across is we can't trust the Russians. And many people have that attitude, but we don't need to trust the Russians because we have seismographs, we have satellites, and just this year the Soviet Union has invited our scientists to go over and inspect their testing grounds. We are still testing nuclear weapons, and they can install seismographs, which they have been doing, so that we don't have to trust the Russians. Those people who can't accept trusting the Russians don't have to, because we can develop ways to...
Okay. Well said. I have to... Look at this. Talk about never giving up. Stand up. Show them here. This is what you call loyalty, baby. Mondale Ferraro. Okay.
Mondale Ferraro.
You know, you lost, you know. It's over. It's over. We could...
I'll never give up. I'll never give up on anything I said.
I just want to ask who the American people think are crazy. Those of us that are walking across the nation for peace, or the people that sit around in conference rooms dreaming up weapons to wipe out the planet. They think it's perfectly acceptable to kill every Russian and maybe 100 million Americans. Now, is that a war that's winnable? Is that a planet that we want to live on? And that's what they're saying. They have got the American people brainwashed. It is time to wake up and start writing and doing something about peace, because we can have it. Remember anti-war days in 1960 when we first started demonstrating?
Yes.
They said it could never happen.
But you know what, doesn't it bother you that before anybody got excited, we had to kill 200 and 300 a week? It's in Vietnam.
Right.
We don't seem to get anything going until we've lost some of our own.
No, it seems that way. There is a lot of apathy, but there doesn't have to be apathy.
Less than half of us vote.
I realize that.
Can't name our congressman.
I realize that.
Not our senators.
But that can change. If they only knew that one letter is worth.
You know what you'd get? When you send a letter to a congressman, you know what you get? They have automatic typewriters. Thank you for writing. I'll be home and come to see me at my next speech. Do you know what I mean? That's the cynicism that is abroad in our land.
Yes, I've had that cynicism myself.
How'd you get rid of it?
Well, I suppose Helen Caldecott helped. People like Jean Larac, who has fought in 3 wars, helped.
Admiral, yes.
Yes, he knows that
So
there's...
you really, you obviously haven't given up. You
No,
must be worried, though, that a lot of people have.
I have. We talked to them right here in New Jersey and New York. Yes, they have given up. They're more concerned about the World Series than world peace, I grant you that. But we are in New York today.
So you'll give them that. It is true, we are in New York City with members of the Great Peace March. How do you feel about this? Let's give this audience, as well as those at home, an opportunity to get in on this discussion with us. And we'll be back in just a moment. Joined us late. These are the folks who walked across America. This is some of the people. There are others who are, I am told, very shortly and perhaps as we speak, walking across the George Washington Bridge. This is the much, incidentally, People magazine, I thought, wrote, features in this week's issue a very, very instructive and compelling pictorial portrait of your march. God bless People magazine. Are you there? I'm glad you waited. Go ahead.
Yes, sir, Phil. This is Mike Hudson calling from historic Bardstown, Kentucky.
Yes, sir.
Raining here today, and I'm off from work, and
yeah,
I certainly can sympathize with the marchers. I think what they're doing is fine. What they look like has no bearing on it whatsoever.
I'm almost out of time, Bardstown. What is your point?
What I'd like to know is what are they really going to do about them Russians? That kind of bothers me. If we get rid of all these bombs, what are we going to do about theirs?
Sure you can.
You know, I get kind of tired of all this business about how the Russians are after us. We wouldn't be here at this particular moment if we didn't trust the Russians. And I wake up every morning and I trust that they are not going to drop a bomb on me and that I can get to them and I can talk to them. And I am sick and tired of all the people who make money out of not talking to them and who want to continue that kind of rat race.
Bill, I would just like to answer something more about that trusting the Russians. You know, William Colby, our former head of the CIA, said there's only one thing we have to trust, and that's we're going to trust them to survive. Just like we want to trust ourselves to survive, both sides want to survive. That's where the trust has to lie. That's all we have to do.
Are you there? I'm glad you waited. Go ahead.
Yes, I have 2 brothers that are in the service presently, and last year on the TWA flight in Beirut, one of my best friends was a hostage that was killed. And I just feel like we need to protect ourselves. It seems like everybody's out to get the Americans.
Yeah, why do you suppose nobody seems to like us? Why do you suppose that is?
Maybe they don't like the way we've gotten ahead in our fears in the country.
Let me just try this. I think we're neat. I happen to be one of us, so I'm hardly your most objective observer. But I think we appear to look to the world like we swagger, you know?
Uh-huh.
Like, don't tread on me. And when the bombs are dropping anywhere in the world and the people in the crowded cities look up, and it may not be us, they think it's us. And they feel that the plane was made in the USA. And so now your sons, who may wear an American uniform, are at risk for that very reason if they're serving in a foreign country.
Right.
How'd we get here? $1 trillion, and we're more frightened and insecure than ever. How do you figure that?
It doesn't seem like you were saying about the knife, you just can't seem to trust that they won't just drop all of their research and their bombing and expect us to drop it too.
Yeah. Hang on a minute. Yes, sir.
In fact, for the second year running, the Soviet people have proposed a 50% reduction in arms by the United States and the Soviet Union. They wish to end the arms race. The central point of their foreign policy is to disarm the world by the year 2000. They are, in fact, doing that. The point about having a knife or a gun is you can neither call that defensive or offensive. It's there to use. We call Star Wars defensive. It is, in fact, can be used however. It's an incredibly offensive piece of destruction that our president chose to forego disarming by 50% to keep this piece of machinery. We need to worry less about the Soviets than to worry about our leadership.
Betty, get in here. What moves you, Betty Thomas?
What moves me? Let's see. Well, first of all, I wasn't with these people for the last 3 days. I was with them in Nebraska, in a small town I can't remember the name of, in fact. Elm Creek. And I found them there, and Chicago also. I guess they pushed my peace button, or they stimulated my peace gland, or whatever you want to, however you want to say it. Yeah. I walked for the first half hour in Los Angeles when they were pro-peace, and another thing happened. And then I thought they died, and everybody I talked to said they don't exist anymore when they were in the desert. Then I found out they did exist because Kathy Zoitlin, who's making the documentary, said, come on, I need some funds. I said, okay, but where are they? No one knows they're alive. So anyway, I guess what moved me was that they were still alive, even after being pushed down.
Their relentless pursuit for this
Absolutely.
thing.
And also the ability to articulate. I sit here and I think, oh, that's so good. I have to write that down somewhere so when somebody says to me, you know, I do feel like that. People in Chicago, the Young Republicans for Peace came out with a flag and said, when we had a march in Lincoln Park, they said, we think that if you remove nuclear bombs, you will remove peace in the world. That was their idea. That's what keeps peace, they said.
Let me show, speaking of Kathy Zoitlin, who made this film, here's another piece of it. I want the viewer to see where you've been and some of what you've been doing. Roll the film.
In the beginning, I was drawn by the vision of pro-peace, an ideal movable city. 5,000 people crossing 15 states, with 2,500 geodesic tents, and mobile kitchens, and laundries and showers, a grandiose movement across the country. In those early days, as corporate pro-peace faced insurance problems, financial problems, even organizational problems, somehow the marchers never lost sight of the issue of nuclear disarmament. I witnessed their deep commitment, their determination not to give up.
That is Kathy Zoitlin, who's... And we'll be back in just a moment.
Get your bags together. Go bring your good friends too. Cause it's getting nearer. It soon will be.
Hang on just a second. You gotta do that. All right. Just a second. I'll let you. Oh, here we are. Are you there? I'm glad you waited. Go ahead.
I'm calling in from Boston, and I and most of my friends lent our bodies to the cause in the 60s. I still wear my McCarthy button with pride and frequently get such looks. Yeah. Let's not forget, 30 years ago today, Hungary was invaded.
Yes,
I was in Washington in September, Everyone should visit the Vietnam Memorial to see how futile a conventional war is, let alone a nuclear holocaust.
Yeah.
But is it still okay for me to root for the Red Sox as long as I write Barney, Frank, Terry, and Kennedy regularly?
Uh-huh. What is your point? That you think the spark is still there?
Oh, I believe the spark is there, but people are, like I live in an apartment complex, and people are just so busy going to work, doing their 10-hour days, coming home, going to sleep. They don't read a newspaper, don't read a magazine.
Yeah.
They could give a as long as they get their paycheck.
I'd like to say something about that,
I don't want to be one of those people. I'm sick of those people. I don't want to be one of those.
Yeah. Phil, right.
Hang on just a second. Hang on. You have such zeal, I can't ignore you. Yes, ma'am.
I am the grandmother of 1,000 marchers right now. Have you seen all these blue ribbons, Phil?
Yes, I have.
Okay, I want to pin you with the blue ribbon, Phil, and wear this until November 15th, until we reach Washington, D.C. And also, we're making these leis. Everyone will be marching into Washington, D.C. with one of these leis. I want to go back to one of the questions.
You'll be brief now, Grandma.
I want to go back to one of the questions that how we look.
Yes, ma'am.
I hurry in the morning to get my tent down and to get all my clothes together to get them on the truck, and then I comb my hair with an egg beater, and I'm on the march.
And you feel good about yourself? And we think you look wonderful.
And wait just a minute. Wait just a minute. The reason we're on the march here is for anti-nuclear disarmament, and I'm so happy that I have all these 1,000 grandchildren, and that we are working for peace, all of us, and I love every one of you. Beautiful, beautiful.
Phil, as a psychiatrist,
Sir,
I'd like to respond to that woman who said that, you know, why is everybody just going off to work? What we're suffering here is from a national schizophrenia, where people just go on like, you know, business as usual, and the fact is our lives are ready to be snuffed out within 30 minutes, any day, any hour. And the fact is this is exactly the kind of thing we have to break through. Yeah. I mean, this kind of schizophrenic reaction where you don't have to think about it, you don't have to do anything. All you have to do is just pretend it's not there. Our leaders will take care of it.
Right.
The leaders don't know anything about this. The fact is it's going to be the people that are going to have to do it.
Martin Sheen is not going to be described as a pushy Hollywood personality. Let me try and drag in this thing, Marty. Tell us why you're here.
Well, obviously, the policy of the United States, as well as the Soviet Union and the other 5 nuclear powers in the world, is one of arrogance. But arrogance is ignorance matured. And what must happen is that each individual must take personal responsibility for peacemaking, and it begins with ourselves. And until we transcend the flesh, in other words, you're talking about the economic situation. Yes, we are on war footing. We have to transcend that, do without, as these people have done, and unite the will of the Spirit with the work of the flesh.
Yeah. Can you do this and have it? Did you give up your jobs? You gave up your. What did you do?
I was working in a museum in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Really?
Yes, I worked at. I was a curator of art and sold artwork, and I am an artist myself, and I gave that up to come on the march. But what I'd like to say is, in reaction to the Reykjavik conference, some of us went down to Washington, D.C. to meet with the arrogance in Washington. And what I'd like to tell people that they have to write to their congressman. The congressmen told me everyone in their state is for SDI, and they vote across the board for military spending. If the people who support us write letters now and make it known that they support this, they will be heard.
Hi, I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah, and I worked for the Utah Symphony Orchestra for the president. I was administrative assistant for 6 years.
And,
yes.
you were moved to surrender that job and start walking because?
Well, I'd been working in the peace movement in Utah. We have the nuclear testing that we have to deal with, and the radiation victims in southern Utah who are still dying from the nuclear testing in the 1950s. And some of them still do not get compensation for that, for the deaths.
The other thing I think that troubles Americans, stay with me, I can't do this by myself, is that even if Gorbachev and Reagan, you know, wipe it out and as, you know, this grand thing, no nukes, somebody who just talked to God will come in with a nuke in a shoebox. The genie is out of the bottle. And as long as it is, we have to have our nuclear deterrent. It's here, and it will never go away. That's the mindset against which you march.
Well, the problem is, though, that all of these higher technology bombs that you can put in briefcases are being worked on right now.
And they're more likely to fall in the hands of that kind of person as well.
Exactly. And so that is why we have ex-Pentagon military people and scientists who already have a plan for mutual reduction of arms. The experts who have worked with these weapons have a plan to reduce them and eliminate. It's the leaders who are not listening.
Are you there? I'm glad you waited. Go ahead.
Yes. I have a question for the audience in general and your distinguished panel. I'm only 35 years old, but I did hear about Pearl Harbor. And I don't know, haven't we learned a lesson? We were talking peace with the Japanese, and we got bombed out. Our Navy, people, thousands killed. We can't really sit down and talk nuclear disarmament until we can possibly be sure that these Russians will not do another Pearl Harbor. History does repeat itself.
You want to talk to her? All right.
The situation in the world was a whole lot different when we were back in World War II. There were 2 nuclear bombs on the Earth. They were both dropped, by the way. And now the situation is very different. We have 50,000 nuclear weapons on the planet. It's just a whole different place we're in as humans.
You could argue that what Japan learned from Pearl Harbor is that militarism will destroy you. I mean, the island nation was decimated because of Pearl Harbor, and it's, yeah. Speaking of mainstream, how are you doing?
Good, good. But
How did you take a bath? You remember that? In the...
I'm clean.
I believe you. Go ahead.
If we dropped a bomb over there, it's going to come back to us anyway. The radiation doesn't just fall there. It falls on us, too. It's going to destroy us.
Yes, excuse me. Yes, thanks for waiting. Hi.
Hi, Phil. I'm a nurse, and I'm in the business of saving lives, but I am for nuclear weapons, so whatever weapons will allow me to have freedom that I enjoy in the United States.
Yes.
I would like to know if these people think they stand a chance in marching through Russia.
Yes.
Have an answer, please.
Yeah, may I ask from what country you come?
I'm from Cuba, and I lived under communism, and I had no freedom. I was a teenager. I had ideals, and I could not march or do anything that I can do in this wonderful country.
And in order to make sure that communism doesn't come here, we have to have a nuclear deterrent.
We have to be prepared. We have to be prepared. We have freedom of the press. We know what our Congress is doing. They don't have freedom of the press. We don't know what they're doing at any particular time.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't feel more secure with more nuclear weapons. I feel much more threatened, and I would like to awaken people's consciousness to this event.
I don't think that we're going to make friends by sticking a gun or a nuclear weapon at their side. I've only made a friend in any attempt that I've ever made by being a friend to them. We will change people's minds when we decide to change it in a peaceful way, not in a warlike way.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I don't think realistically anyone is suggesting that we are going to become communists or communists are going to adopt our form of government. What we are hoping, looking, and praying for is peaceful coexistence so that we can all continue to be what we choose to be and not be dead.
We'll be back in just a moment.
We can live in peace. Peace. Let the
There were, during this peace march, 4 marriages? 8 pregnancies? Or no? 12 pregnancies. And there was, it should be reported, however, sadly, 1 death. This march began in March of 2 deaths. This march began in March of this year. You are, at this moment, arriving in New York City, and you will make your way to Washington, D.C., where you will arrive, we can only speculate in how many numbers, on November 15th, where you will dine with the President at the White House.
Well, Phil.
Have you asked, Mayor? Have you asked?
Yes, we have asked the president.
Wouldn't it be nice if the president would meet you?
It would be wonderful. Phil, we've had mayors right along the way. These are a collection of ribbons that we have that mayors have signed from cities all along our route. You see, Phil, what we're trying to prove as we walk along is all these divergent people, all the shapes and sizes, can get along not only with each other, but also with each individual town we went through and we camped beside, and we set up our peace city. 173 so far. No weapons, only zippers with us folks. And yet we got along with every community. Indeed, the mayors came out and shook our hands and said that they were glad to have us there. We've had good mayoral support.
Right.
It's the grassroots who are reaching out to us.
Well, you won't accuse me of patronizing you if I say that you are to be admired for exercising your democratic right. Clearly, if we had more people who took advantage of that opportunity, perhaps we'd have an improvement in what ails us. I'm glad you waited. Are you there, caller? Hello?
Hello?
Go ahead, sir.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to applaud.
I don't have a lot of time, sir. You'll make your point.
Okay, my point is, how many of those same people who just walked 3,000 miles are willing to go out there and vote on Tuesday, November 4th? How many of them have run for office? How many of them have walked door to door to help elect people who are representatives that would...
Have you taken part in the political process? Is that a bad question?
Let me say this
We've all sent our absentee ballots.
As the mayor of these people, I know that one of our requirements for being in the march was to get our absentee ballot. And we're always asking each other, are you voting? Are you ready? Well, of course we know the candidates. And in our own city, our voting average is about 98% when it comes to big issues. So yes, indeed, we do exercise that right.
Let me share with you once again a piece of Kathy's film, which will, I think, reveals that not everything along the way was song and wonderful sunsets. Here's just a sense of some of the depression that many of you felt as you made your way across the United States of America.
I feel like I'm one of the marchers who doesn't know anything, and I'm just going along thinking that everything's okay, and every night we have food, and every morning there's breakfast, and I sleep in my tent every night, so I think everything's okay, but everything isn't okay.
I'm only concerned about the water and the status of it.
I've almost lost total focus of what we're going for.
I sort of wish we knew more about dinner.
I don't really know anything except that we're stuck in a dump in Barstow. We're being recycled, right, into another march.
The concern that people might have as to whether we're going to get to Washington, D.C. or not, I can assure you we are.
This is, and we'll be back in just a minute. Peace marches at located the headquarters are 310 Madison Avenue. Well, boy, aren't you uptown. Number 2110. Maybe you are mainstream, New York City. The zip is 10017. The Great Peace March is at 310 Madison Avenue, 2110 New York City, 10017. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to say if you'd like to send some donations there, they would be greatly appreciated. And I would like to invite all of you to Washington, D.C. on November 15th.
Joshua Stanley, San Francisco, U.S. Army, Lieutenant Colonel retired. What am I doing here?
That's what I want to know.
We were at the place where the military, as we know it, could no longer be effective. End of statement.
You know, Colonel, one thing I think has escaped perhaps some of the Joint Chiefs are not, it seems to me, universally favoring, for example, our policy in Central America and other places. Your own colleagues with whom you served are dissenting quietly with regard to a lot of the military decisions that are being made.
That's right.
Why don't we at least let them go on Meet the Press?
You know, we're lucky in this country that the military is subservient to the civilian. Yes. And they are we are your servants. Yes. And we don't make the rules.
Yeah. And furthermore, Phil, furthermore, I just wanted to say something about Star Wars. which was supposedly we didn't make that agreement. We didn't make that agreement because he said he's protecting the American people. It's a phony issue. It's not for protecting people. It's for protecting missile silos. And I want everybody to understand you're not being protected by Star Wars, so don't be taken in by that.
Right. Peter Yarrow steps forward now to make a very brief observation, and then we'll go out with what will bring memories and maybe a tear to not a few Americans who fought the good fight in the 60s.
I want to tell you all and ask anybody watching to join me in the last leg of this march. We've done it before with Martin Luther King and people's lives were not threatened. We will do it again together. This is a long march. Sing with me now. How many roads must a man walk before they can call him a man? Before they can call him a man. How many seas must a white dove sail? How many seas must a white dove sail before she can sleep in the sand? Before she can sleep in the sand. How many times must the cannon
Yes, thank you. I want to greet the American people. I want to greet the American peace marchers, and I want to give you hope from Berlin West.
Service is provided and promotional fees paid by the following.
If you're really serious about safety, maybe you should buy a Volvo instead.
You can beautify and protect metal surfaces with quality True Test XO Rust Red Metal Primer, aluminum paint, and gloss enamel from True Value Hardware stores.
The Drake offers an exciting weekend in New York at a special price. The only Swiss hotel on Park Avenue. For reservations, call 800-DRAKE-NEW YORK or 212-421-0900.
Can we just tell people what they can do, Phil? Phil,